What we don't want to be doing is playing catch up. We've always led the way. We see this as the next massive challenge for humanity, the next area of innovation, and we really need to be there at the forefront as we have been in the past. I've worked for Dräger for 7 years, but the last 2 have really been focused on the sustainability effort. What I would say is that because we always look at things from a safety perspective, people perceive that the energy transition is clean, green, and therefore safe, and that's not necessarily always the case. A lot of the risks that come from traditional industries, like general industry and oil and gas, come over into the energy transition effort. From my point of view, I always think about a gas is a gas. So hydrogen is hydrogen, no matter how it's produced. It's exactly the same for CO2, which we work with in general industry in brewing. But of course, now we see carbon capture as part of the clean energy effort. CO2 is going to be a risk there. This has been our first and primary focus, has been to support and educate the industry as it has made this transition and as people within the energy transition. It's largely similar, and a lot of the learnings from industry are transferable from one industry to the other.
And thinking about that kind of question around sort of, I suppose, carbon dioxide or methane detection, how do those fit into this with the energy transition? How does detection of those things fit in?
That's a really interesting question, because actually our focus on detection has changed slightly in response to the energy transition. So, as I say, we are a safety company, and particularly when we think about methane from oil and gas, our primary focus historically has been, is there an unsafe level of gas? Is there an explosive risk? But actually, one of the best things that we can do for industry is make the infrastructure that we have even more efficient. That's one of the ways to accelerate our goals towards net zero 2050. So our emissions detection technology, which isn't an area that we've been historically involved with, has accelerated over the last few years. We have a new optical gas imaging camera. And then when we think about CO2 capture, again, we need to think more about making sure those systems don't leak at all, not necessarily just concerning ourselves with those unsafe levels. We now need to take consideration of both, and that requires a changing approach and changing technology as well.
Thinking about innovation, why is it critical, I suppose, for what Dräger's doing, and particularly in the context of cleaner energy?
Innovation for us, this is an area where we're going to need to develop new products, and this is key for me, funneling that information back into the organisation, because we need to make then investment decisions.
And so thinking about the energy transition and decision making, is there perhaps an instance where E-FWD's helped you making some of those developmental decisions?
Definitely, because I've not been to events before where there's such a political presence. So it really helps to hear things from the horse's mouth. It's really been a changed approach for us from Dräger, thinking about the energy transition, because this is a nascent industry and it requires investment, government decisions, in order to get some of these projects off the ground and to make them economically viable. So for us as a business, we need to make sure that we are following the projects that are most likely to go ahead and most economically viable. And when that rests on government decisions, it's really important to be in the room and hearing the words directly from the decision makers, without necessarily it coming through the lens of media that might have an agenda. I think for me, I have to feed back that information to headquarters where we have our research and development facilities, because that's the biggest challenge for us, is making sure that we are meeting the safety needs, and if those safety needs can't be met with our traditional detection technologies, to ensure that we are first to the market with the appropriate solution. What we don't want to be doing is playing catch up. We've been going since 1889. We've always led the way. We see this as the next massive challenge for humanity, the next area of innovation, and we really need to be there at the forefront as we have been in the past. And that's something I'd like to say as well about the articles and the think pieces that come out from E-FWD. They're extremely balanced. So it gives you a really clear way to assess the information that's coming out. I get to see both sides. I don't get to necessarily see an agenda, and I think that's a really important part of what E-FWD offers. And I think it can offer that because it is behind a paywall, and we're not relying upon clickbait, those sensationalist headlines that make people engage with a piece of media or don't. Actually, what you can get is clear and concise information that can help you make strategic decisions for your business.
And so what makes the E-FWD events particularly interesting or impactful for you?
I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that it's peer-to-peer networking. The fact that people have paid to be there, it's not just about the exclusivity, it's about that people desire to be there, they want to share their opinions. And I think this fosters a candid networking that you don't get at many other events, because everyone's operating at a certain level. These are the people that actually want to make the change. These are change makers. So one of the things that I found most interesting has been the tents, where we come in together and we discuss certain topics. At E-FWD, the events always have an agenda and there is always a call to action. And I think that's extremely important, because what makes me want to spend my time or go to an E-FWD event is because I feel like there's something that comes out of the back end, and that is driven by E-FWD as well. We see the reports that come out, we see the engagement that you guys have directly with that the political level of the country, whether it's on a local or a national level. So I feel like my participation in those discussions within the tents is actually contributing directly to some of the decisions that are being made, or maybe stopping some decisions from being made that wouldn't be helpful for the energy transition. It's a direct link between industry and policy because of the foundation of E-FWD.
And so what's next for Dräger and your energy transition goals?
What's next is that we need to make clean energy and the energy transition business as usual for the rest of the team. My role was created specially. I'm actually the only clean energy dedicated business development manager within Dräger within Europe. We need to make this part of the daily business of our industry and of our salespeople. And I think that's probably aligned with the approach, the wider approach in general of the UK. The energy transition needs to be business as usual. It needs to stop being an outlier. It needs to be commercially viable. It needs to be a natural step and progression when people think about how they are going to grow their business or make future investment decisions. It's a key point for us is that I am there to bring everybody along in the journey, not that this is a journey that I'm going to make alone.
And how can E-FWD help you with your big plans?
Well, it goes right back to what we said before. We want to get more people engaged in Dräger in the energy transition and looking at this as a daily part of their work. What I really want to do is make sure that we can get the E-FWD content out to more of the team. We are still seeing this as a small part of the projects that we do. And in fact, for Dräger, energy is actually a small part of what we do. We work a lot in that wider general industry piece. And this has been a challenge for us because the clean energy transition has been permeating everywhere. It's in distilleries, it's in energy, but it's in food and beverage. It's even in hospitals, where we obviously have our medical arm, as every part of the critical national infrastructure tries to decarbonize. So we just need to get everyone that little bit more engaged when the time becomes appropriate, and then making sure that they can also use the resources by E-FWD to make that process easier for them.